We begin with legal matters and the fresh revelation from trial of former Central Bank Governor Godwin Emefiele. The former Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustapha, has told the Federal Capital Territory High Court, Abuja, that the signature, which purportedly emanated from the former President Muhammadu Buhari for the payment of foreign election observers, was fake. Mr. Mustapha testified today as the second prosecution witness in the ongoing trial of Mr. Emefiele, where he is accused of impersonating the former SGF to obtain the sum of $6.2 million. Our judiciary correspondent, Emefiele, reports.
The former Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustapha, is the second prosecution witness to testify in the trial of the former CBN Governor, Mr. Godwin Emefiele. Mr. Emefiele is standing trial in a $6.2 million fraud. He was accused by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission of impersonating the former SGF to obtain the said sum. At the proceeding, Mr. Mustapha clarifies that he knew nothing about the transaction until he left office. He further says the documents did not emanate from the office of the former President Muhammadu Buhari, as he did not carry a reference number or the seal of authority. Mr. Mustapha further told the court that in all the correspondences he received from the former president, he never concluded with, "Please accept with my highest regard." He pointed out that his signature was a failed attempt at reproducing the former president's signature. He adds that the federal government has no business with payment of foreign election observers. In his further testimony, he says the Federal Executive Council decisions are not transmitted by letters, but through extras after conclusions are adopted. And as the custodian of the records of FEC, the president will not be referring conclusions to him. Mr. Mustapha denied knowledge of any special task force on logistics, as well as anyone by the name Jibrin Abubakar, Principal Officer 1 in the SGF's office. The trial judge, Justice Hamza Mwazu, subsequently adjourned the case to the 7th, 11th, and 25th of March for continuation of trial. Emefiele, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the senior advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Femi Falana, is asking the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, to stop meddling in the running of affairs of Nigeria. The human rights lawyer also challenged the global body to stop setting double standards for Africa and the European countries. He was speaking earlier on our political program, Politics Today.
There's no society, there's no country in the world where government does not subsidize one product or the other, even in the most advanced capitalist societies. And that is why Nigerians must now begin to ask the government to discard and jettison the deleterious programs and policies of the IMF and World Bank. Because just yesterday, the IMF was asking the government to remove fuel subsidy in its entirety and also increase electricity tariff. Whereas the government had told the nation and the IMF and World Bank, come, the political atmosphere in the country is not conducive to electricity tariff because our people are suffering. The government is subsidizing the discourse. The only economic body recognized by the Constitution to advise the president is the National Economic Council, headed by the vice president. And that body is peopled by the governors, the governor of the central bank, state governors, the governor of the central bank, the minister of finance. So why has that body abdicated its responsibility to the IMF and World Bank? The report of the 2020 report of the Auditor General of the Federation sent to the National Assembly last November. That report is saying that the $3.5 billion, the loan of $3.5 billion taken by Nigeria from the IMF cannot be located. That is what the report is saying. The IMF should be interested in that. Because we are required to pay the loan in 3 years. between 4 years, between 2023 and 2027. So the IMF should be interested in that and stop mounting pressure on the government to multiply the hardship of Nigerians. And Nigerian, the government must summon the courage to tell this institution to mind their business and allow our country to be run in the interest of our country.
In other stories, the People's Democratic Party, PDP, is maintaining its position that the president should urgently address the country's worsening security situation and the economy before it gets unbearable for citizens. The opposition party made the call at its 76th Board of Trustees meeting in Abuja. The meeting also confirmed the appointment of former Senate President Adolphus Wabara as a substantive chairman of the PDP BOT.
It is the 76th meeting of the People's Democratic Party's Board of Trustees, attended by the chairman of the PDP Governors Forum and members of the National Working Committee. The meeting is convened to discuss the operations of the party's National Working Committee, threats to the unity of the party, and also to take some decisions regarding the leadership of the party's Board of Trustees.
Now, the issue of tribunals and electoral cases are over. There's no better time to kickstart the process of rebuilding this party than now.
The governors have also asked me to tell you that we are working to make sure that we repositioned with you, the party, and reduce and minimize rancor and division, which had characterized us in the past because of our size and our divergent interests.
Before the meeting goes into a closed-door session, the acting chairman of the PDP Board of Trustees underscores the need for the PDP to remain united.
We know that there are plans to turn this country into a one-party state. And that is only when we allow it. And our role as the Board of Trustees, the main organ of this party, is to ensure that this party does not die.
The meeting then proceeds into a technical session.
Thank you very much.
Some moments later, the acting BOT chairman reads the communique of the meeting.
The BOT calls on President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to know that the situation in the country has become unbearable. Mr. President should immediately address the issues of corruption in his administration, worsening insecurity in the country, continuous fall in the value of the naira, high fuel prices, unbearable food scarcity, and unemployment in the country.
Apart from the demand on President Tinubu, the meeting also confirmed the appointment of Senator Wabara as the substantive chairman of the PDP Board of Trustees.
And in a swift reaction coming from the federal government to the recent stance on the PDP and some national matters, the federal government has condemned the communique released by PDP governors after their meeting yesterday in Abuja. In a statement by the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, the government maintains it is mischievous and false for the PDP governors to compare the rough patches the country is going through with the current economic challenges in Venezuela. According to him, the Nigerian economy is still very strong and it is expected to record a 3% GDP growth this year, even as it meets its financial obligations to lenders both at home and abroad. According to the minister, since President Tinubu assumed office, the revenue available to the three tiers of government has more than doubled, as all 36 states, including 774 local government areas, have all been receiving significant larger allocations on the back of the reforms being pursued by the president to reposition the nation's economy. To other stories, the president has conferred national honors on members of the Super Eagles and the technical team after commending them for making the nation proud at the just concluded Africa Cup of Nations in Côte d'Ivoire. Speaking at the reception in honor of the players at the State House, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu praised the team for the exemplary display of unity, determination and resilience on the field. Our State House correspondent Larry Lasisi reports that the president also announced the donation of a flat and a plot of land to each member of the team.
President Bola Tinubu arriving at the council chamber for the reception in honor of the players and technical team of the Super Eagles.
Please, have your seats.
The reception had in attendance the Vice President, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, some ministers, and other government officials. The Minister of Sports applauds the support and encouragement provided by the President.
That the entire team remains very grateful for all the support it received from you. For the first time in almost forever years, we've gone for a major competition. We've come back without any crisis, without any complaint, without any issues whatsoever.
The vice captain of the team thanked the president for the support and promised that the team will strive to do better.
Yeah, we gave all we had. We did our best onto the final. I wish that we were here carrying the trophy for you, and all we can promise that we'll be continue to working harder, and the next time we meet, hopefully next year, we'll be bringing home a gold medal.
The president said the team made the country proud and had taught Nigerians lessons on resilience, togetherness and diversity.
We salute your resilience. You lifted our spirit. You made us proud. You made us smile as Nigerians. And trust second, you are a true captain. You are a warrior. Osimhen is a Trojan horse. Lookman didn't look at anybody. I enjoy your camaraderie. I wish Nigeria politics is like that. Using our diversity for development as a nation.
The president then confers national honors on members of the team.
As the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, to all of you, I'm honoring you with national honor, members of the Order of Niger. A promise of one flat each for every one of you. A plot of land for each and every player.
One after the other, the players made their way to receive their awards from the president. After which, group photographs were taken. The president also promised to promote sports and youth development, even as he committed to attracting greater private sector investment to the Nigerian Professional Football League. From the presidential villa, Larry Lasisi, Channels Television News.
In part two, after the break, Nigeria and the United Kingdom sign agreement to boost trade in both countries. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, coming to you live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Former Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, testifies in the trial of former CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele, says the signature in the letter for the payment of $6.2 million to foreign election observers was fake. Marathon session in the Senate as lawmakers engage in the nation's service chiefs, the NSA and some ministers in talks behind closed doors for nearly 10 hours over the prevailing security situation in the country. Human rights lawyer Femi Falana asked the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, to stop meddling in the nation's affairs and end double standard for Africa and European countries. And the president confers national honors on members of the Super Eagles, and the technical team praises them for making Nigeria proud at the just concluded Africa Cup of Nations in Côte d'Ivoire. The Senate has concluded the interactive meeting with service chiefs, the NSA heads of service, about 10 hours after the meeting that held behind closed doors at the National Assembly. Speaking after that meeting with the service chiefs, the National Security Advisor, President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, says that lawmakers are impressed with the submissions made at that meeting. Has also asked the Minister of Finance to ensure that funds are released in good time for the procurement of military equipment.
The Senate also listened to various efforts made in areas that suffer serious insecurities in Plateau State, in Benue State, in Taraba State, in Zamfara State, in Nasarawa State, also in Katsina State, Kaduna and other places, and also Anambra State, and also listen to briefs from security agents and security chiefs on the efforts being made on those specific instances. The Senate was impressed with their determination and focus, but the Senate urges them to do more to ensure total security of lives and properties in the nation. Therefore, the Senate is of the view that the executive arm of government has been making a lot of efforts in the security sector through the procurement process of new equipment, including technology, to combat various insurgencies in the country. The Senate also pointed out that yes, appropriations have been made and releases made, but the Senate urges the Honorable Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, who himself also gave briefing, to ensure immediate implementation and releases of all funds needed by security agencies in order to combat the insurgents, and also procure equipment to fight the insurgents and banditry in the nation to keep Nigeria safe.
Nigeria and the United Kingdom have signed an enhanced trade and investment partnership to help boost trade relations between both countries. The Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Mrs. Doris Uzoka-Anite, signed this agreement alongside the UK Secretary of State Department for Business and Trade, Mrs. Kemi Badenoch, in Abuja. The partnership is the first the UK has signed with the African country, and it is designed to grow the trading relationship. Our correspondent Kayla Migwa reports.
Continuing her engagements on this three-day visit to Nigeria, the UK Secretary of State, Department of Business and Trade, Olukemi Badenoch, arrives at the Bank of Industry Conference Hall in Abuja for the signing of the Enhanced Trade and Investment Partnership. The British High Commissioner to Nigeria underscores the importance of the Memorandum of Understanding in enhancing economic growth in both countries.
We can show that we can talk the talk, we need to walk the walk. And this MOU provides a fantastic platform for our two governments to work together, both to ease the restrictions on trade and investment, but also to help navigate each other's system.
The same sentiments are shared by Nigeria's Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Doris Uzoka-Anite, who adds that barriers to growth of local businesses are being addressed.
These opportunities will not develop themselves. We will need to mutually and intentionally work hard at materializing them. And this goes beyond giving nice speeches about how we love each other and how the ETB is supposed to help us. It involves active cooperation through dialogue, robust exchange of information, economic cooperation, and offering assistance when needed.
The Enhanced Trade and Investment Partnership, ETIP, is the first the United Kingdom is signing with an African country and initiates further collaboration on the United Kingdom's Developing Countries Trade Scheme, DCTS. With the signing of this Memorandum of Understanding, 99% of existing Nigerian exports to the UK will be duty-free. Tariffs have been removed from Nigerian goods, which promotes value addition in non-oil export sectors like cocoa butter, sesame oil, and clothing. And there are now more opportunities in sectors such as finance, legal services, and the creative industry. Mrs. Badenoch explains that this progress is one that requires full commitments from both countries.
The key thing I want to emphasize within ETIP is that it requires all of us, not just in government, but even especially in the private sector, to take advantage of it. Later on, we're going to be signing other MOUs between private sector companies. They also use these agreements as a way to facilitate the work that they do. So what we're not saying that after this agreement is signed, all the problems in the UK and Nigeria will disappear. Far from it. This is yet another opportunity for us to create those linkages that enable us to work together.
Apart from improving on the already existing £7 billion trade figures Nigeria has with the United Kingdom, it is hoped that the benefits of this enhanced trade and investment partnership will trickle down to Nigerians especially, as the country tries to navigate a rough economic climate. Kayla Magwa, Channels Television News.
For more on the news at 10, we head over to Abuja studios where Maokwe Ogun Yusuf is standing by to give us more. Hello, Maokwe. It's good to see you.
Hello, and always good to see you as well. Well, we're starting off with labor matters, where the federal government has given assurances to workers that it will resume the payment of wage award to them this week. A statement by the Director of Press and Public Relations says that the Minister of State, Labor and Employment, Nkiruka Onyejiocha, gave the assurance at a meeting with the leadership of the two labor centers on account of the ultimatum to the government on the implementation of the 16-point agreement reached with them on October the 2nd last year. The minister also appealed to the Nigeria Labour Congress at the NLC and the Trade Union Congress to suspend their 14-day ultimatum as government has stepped up efforts to complete the implementation of that agreement. The minister had convened the meeting in order to brief Labour on the progress of the implementation of the agreement. Meanwhile, the federal government is calling for social dialogue as a better industrial dispute resolution mechanism to promote industrial stability in the country. Both the Minister of Labour and Employment and the Attorney General of the Federation made the recommendation at the second National Labour Adjudication and Arbitration Forum here in Abuja.
It's the second National Labour Adjudication and Arbitration Forum in Abuja, and expectedly, the Minister of Labour and Employment, President of the National Industrial Court, the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, as well as leaders of workers' union are in attendance. The objective is how to foster a healthy and stable employer-employee relationship in Nigeria.
We are of the opinion that we should always engage in the use of alternative dispute resolution mechanisms for a sustainable industrial relations system in Nigeria.
I hope this forum serves as a catalyst for transformative change aimed at achieving a sustainable industrial relations, leading to enhanced labor adjudication and arbitration processes.
The conversations here also underscore the importance of social dialogue in resolving labor issues.
Whether it is social, political, or otherwise, what is important is that epitome dialogue, and it has proved very useful.
There is a need to foster better labor market governance, especially in regard to issues such as labor law, wages, social security reform, migrant workers management, taxation, and other fiscal policies.
Issues around the ongoing negotiations for a new minimum wage also took center stage.
Under the present administration, I want to say that we have a tripartite committee on review of minimum wage, not only the wage, and some other conditions. My advice is that we seize this opportunity to the maximum. But when we go to the table, we go with I give and I also take.
No matter what we negotiate in the present Nigerian economy, the next 5 years, it can't buy a bag of rice. So we have to look at all these issues. When we talk about social dialogue, we say the law says we'll negotiate again after 5 years. After 5 years, I don't know the value of the currency we have. Then we should have a system. And every year, look at the level of inflation, look at the devaluation, and adjust.
Protests and industrial actions are a recurring decimal in Nigeria's labor ecosystem, a development which this forum believes should be discouraged.
Still ahead on the news at 10, Nigeria's oil production rises to over 1.4 million barrels per day in January, according to OPEC's latest report. That's some business news. Do join us again. Welcome back. Members of the Food, Beverage and Tobacco Senior Staff Association of Nigeria have given the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, 14 days to reverse its ban on sachet alcohol. Members of the association are threatening to increase protests across the agency's offices nationwide if nothing is done about it. The association, an affiliate of the Trade Union Congress, issued the threat during a protest at the NAFDAC headquarters here in Abuja. The national president of the association, Mr. Jim Oyibo, led the protest and submitted a letter containing the demands of the union. In the meantime, in Ogun State, the food, beverages and tobacco employees have also protested the ban of alcohol in sachets and PET bottles and closure of the production lines by the National Food Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC. The protesting workers who marched through Adodo, Ota, local government area of Ogun State, lamented the effects the policy will have on business owners. Receiving the protesters at his palace, the Olota of Ota, Professor Adeyemi Abdulkadir Obalalenge, appealed to NAFDAC and the federal government to backtrack on the ban.
As expected, reactions are trailing the government's decision to put a ban on alcohol beverages in PET bottles and sachets. Assembled in Ota, Ogun State, are members of the labor unions protesting the removal of subsidy and the current economic hardship in the land. The protesters, bearing placards with various inscriptions, highlight their grievances with the ban and the adverse effects the action could have on national economy. The protesters played the blame game on NAFDAC, whom they accuse of poor regulations and implementation.
Please, the NAFDAC should answer my question. I am a Nigerian citizen. Yes. I have right to work. Yes. I have right to live. Yes. I have right to talk. Yes. NAFDAC woman should come to our aid. Yes. Let him come and tell us why this is a problem.
Having gone through the streets to gain attention and the sympathy of residents, the protesters moved to the palace of the Olota of Ota, where they reiterate their concerns.
We begin to ask, what is the agenda of NAFDAC? Madam NAFDAC DG said that it is because children are drinking alcohol in sachet. But there is no evidence to prove that children that are drinking this alcohol are being subjected to any trauma or psychological pain.
We're supposed to be what? Be thinking of the government representative, which is NAFDAC. And when taking such a decision, we should think, how does it affect the people in the street? How does it affect what? The workers? How does it affect the dependent relative? Etc., etc.
The Olota of Ota thanks them for the peaceful conduct during the protest as he calls on NAFDAC and the federal government to take a second look at the ban in view of the current situation in the country.
I want to call on the Director General of NAFDAC, Professor Adeyeye, to rethink, to look at the numbers of workers that will be sent into unemployed world.
The workers say about 25 industries owned by wines and spirits producers whose businesses are dependent on the production of beverage drinks and sachets are likely to close down. They are also worried that about 5 million jobs may be lost, noting that the ban may give room for production of unrefined and counterfeited products which are counterproductive to the national economy and the health of the people.
Meanwhile, officials of the National Agency on Food, Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, and on enforcement exercise were today attacked by hoodlums at the Area 1 Motor Park here in Abuja. The hoodlums harassed the enforcement officers, including mobile policemen, and stoned the agency's vehicle, breaking its windscreen. Calm was later restored after police officers shot into the air several times and released tear gas to disperse the hoodlums. The team leader, Mr. Umar Ahmed Suleiman, an Assistant Chief Regulatory Officer at NAFDAC, said the raid followed intelligence received by the agency of a high volume of substandard drugs in the park. And that's all from our studios here in Abuja. It's back now to you, Anne.
Thank you very much, Malkwe. And to more stories here, eminent personalities have continued to call at the family home of the group CEO of Access Holdings, Herbert Wigwe, who died in a helicopter crash in the United States alongside his wife, son, and the former chairman of the Nigeria Exchange Group, Abimbola Ogunbanjo. One of the latest to visit is the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, in company of the Minister of State for Petroleum, Heineken Lokwobiri, and others to pay tribute to the foremost banker. Also present at the late Mr. Herbert's parents' residence was Nigerian businessman and industrialist Aliko Dangote, amongst others. And yesterday, some of Mr. Herbert Wigwe's friends and associates were on a condolence visit to the family where they met his aged parents. They include Africa's richest man, Aliko Dangote, Governor of Ogun State, Dapo Abiodun, his longtime ally and chairman, Ig Imokwede Foundation, Mr. Aiboje Ig Imokwede, the founder of Stanbic IBTC Bank, ANAP Foundation, Mr. Atedo Peterside, and political economist Professor Pat Utomi. After his visit to Lagos, the FCT minister on return to Abuja reiterated his administration's commitment to uphold the May 24, 2024 deadline for the completion of most of the ongoing projects in the Federal Capital Territory amidst inflation and other economic challenges. The minister made the pledge after inspecting some of the ongoing projects in the FCT, and some of those projects inspected are the Vice President's residence and some access roads like Powerhouse Junction, Apple Bridge, Wuye Bridge, among other roads.
I think we're quite optimistic that with the speed of work and taking advantage of the weather, we believe that by May, this project will be ready. Of course, they didn't work for 3 days because of the construction workers strike, 3 days working strike. That alone took a lot of things out from them. But we believe that we will not have a repeat of that incident. First of all, whether inflation or not, that's why we're here, to solve problems. With the taxes people pay, we try as much as we can to allocate it to the priority projects. Again, we don't allow variation. And why? Because we always try to pay as at when due. So the issue of variation does not come in. And every contractor will want to have their money as quickly as possible. so that this trustee knows that we are going to pay, and we have been paying. So whatever funds that we have gotten, we'll try to pay them without wasting time.
Let's head to Enugu State now, where the governor, Peter Mbah, has inaugurated the State Security Trust Fund to help build on the successes achieved in the area of security in the state. Inaugurating the 11-member board of trustees of the Trust Fund, chaired by the Group Managing Director of Afro-Invest Trustees Limited, Mr. Ike Chioke, Governor Mbah notes that the projected security expenditure for the year 2024, which is pegged at 20 billion naira, will only be achieved if the private sector partners with the government.
We're going to rededicate ourselves with this inauguration of the Security Trust Fund, because it is our hope that caliber of people we have on the board of trustees, that we're going to be able to get targets in terms of our security budget. We're looking at spending in the next year about 20 billion naira just on security, and a lot of that will be through the mobilization of funds from the private sector and the state, the Enugu State, wish the newly inaugurated trust fund all the best as they commence their duties, and we enjoy the people of Enugu State and all residents and well-wishers of the state to support the trust fund by committing themselves and joining hands to grow the funds.
The Nigeria Content Development and Monitoring Board has organized an energy summit right here in Lagos to host countries from the sub-Saharan African region. The summit is the board's attempt to foster linkages between local content capacities and the African Continental Free Trade Area to enable the exploration of the huge hydrocarbon resource through infrastructure development, financing and research. Our energy correspondent Olu Phillips reports.
You can only go so fast if you go alone, but farther if you do so together. The African Continental Free Trade Area is an infrastructure, and Nigeria's Content Development Board wants energy convergence to lead. 17 sub-Saharan African countries' delegation are repped in this room from spectrum of LNG, power, energy, oil and gas, funders and more, looking for linkages between local content and ACTA.
NCDMB has also leveraged the local content law to facilitate the establishment of major production facilities such as cable manufacturing, sacrificial anodes, valves assembly, in addition to enhancing fabrication capabilities, including FPSO integration. We also have a robust supply chain represented by the Petroleum Technology Association of Nigeria, offering a broad suite of oil field services in Nigeria.
NCDMB has become the postal child and is teaching collaboratively other countries how it has progressed. Just adopt and adjust.
Imagine if you are able to produce the handwheel of a valve in a North African country, and then the bonnet and the back seats in South Africa, and then the body, the weights, and the seal string in any North African country. So they come together in an assembly point, and then they get the right certifications, which is applicable to all of them, and then it's integrated, produce the unit. So you now assemble in a West African country, which is Nigeria.
An estimated $450 billion can be unlocked for Africa if barriers are blurred through R&D, partnership, and sustainable solutions.
If you're doing well as a company in Nigeria, Owando or whatever, you want to go to Gambia or Uganda, go there, get their people, give them 10%, 15%, 20%, 25%. And then you can claim to be son of the soil in that place.
Why energy? Well, in terms of resource endowment, Africa has over 125 billion barrels of crude oil equivalent in terms of its hydrocarbon resource. With energy transition looking around, it's time to develop local competencies and capability by comparing notes. That's the resolve of these delegates as they break out to close deals, courtesy NCDMB.
And still in the energy sector, Will Ibong is standing by to tell us more on Nigeria's oil production in the world of business.
Nigeria's oil production. Thank you so much, Anne, and welcome to Business News. We just jump right in where we see Nigeria's oil production rising to 1.427 million barrels per day in January, and that's according to the latest data from OPEC. The figure contained in the oil cartel's monthly oil market report represents the highest production level since March 2021. We see, according to OPEC's data, Nigeria's crude oil output rose by 91,476 barrels per day in January, marking a 6.85% increase when compared to 1.335 million barrels recorded in December 2023. Meanwhile, the report also shows that the country's oil rig count was lower by 1 to 15 in January from 16 recorded in December last year. Now, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, has asked the federal government to completely phase out fuel and electricity subsidies. The IMF, in its recent report, highlights that the federal government, among other measures such as release of grains, provision of subsidized fertilizers to ease impact of galloping inflation, has also capped retail fuel and electricity prices. This, according to the IMF, implies a partial reversal of fuel subsidy removal, which President Bola Tinubu announced an end to on May 29, 2023. The pump price of petrol in this country has remained steady despite the fluctuation in prices of crude oil in the global markets. Now, Access Holdings PLC has announced the appointment of Mrs. Bolaji Agbede as the acting Group Chief Executive Officer, and this follows the death of its former Group Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Helbert Wigwe, in a helicopter crash alongside his wife, son, and a former chairman of the Nigerian Exchange Group, Mr. Abimbola Gumbajo, on Friday in California, United States. A statement made by the company's board of directors and dated February the 12th states that the appointment is subject to the approval of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Now, the domestic equities market reversed gains recorded in Monday as negative sentiments returned to the markets. John Mekwa has the details.
Thank you so much. Welcome to the stock market report. Well, it's the second trading day of the week and it's a negative one. Yes, the figures drove that negative sentiment. So we see here from FBN Holdings down 2.94, UBA also down, GTCO also down, Zenith ever down 3.79%, and the only exception is Access Co. We know sentiment around this, and then the new acting CEO also, I think that has also brought up some investors' confidence, and so we see that looking good there. And so the all-share index at the close of trade today is down 0.33% at 101,707.70. We had about 900 here at intraday, but I see we've gone to 700. Market cap is still comfortably at 55 trillion, 55.652 trillion naira. A summary is what we see when we look at the counters. Of course, the figures are banking, so we expect banking to be in the red, 1.85%. Consumer goods also down. We see that Nigerian breweries lost. Dangote Sugar gained, but not enough to cover up. PZ also lost, so consumer goods is down. Oil and gas are striving to stay green in spite of it. So second trading day of the week, the bear won today.
Thanks, Ini. Now let's check out the closing numbers for other major equities around the world. And that's a wrap on Business News. It's back to you, Anne, for the rest of the news at 10.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thank you, Will. U.S. President Joe Biden is sounding a warning to Israel, saying vulnerable civilians in Rafah must be protected at all costs. Here's Simon Pusey with more international news and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. US President Joe Biden has said civilians who are packed into Rafah in the Gaza Strip are exposed and vulnerable and must be protected.
Many people there have been displaced multiple times, fleeing the violence to the north, and now they're packed into Rafah.
Israel must make credible efforts to protect the more than 1 million Palestinians sheltering in the southern Gazan city, he said. Rafah has come under heavy Israeli airstrikes in recent days, with a number of casualties reported. Doctors say people living in the city were living in fear. The UK Foreign Secretary, Sir David Cameron, says he's very concerned about the situation in Rafah.
It really, we think, is impossible to see how you can fight a war amongst these people. There's nowhere for them to go. They can't go south into Egypt. They can't go north and back to their homes because many have been destroyed. So we are very concerned about the situation, and we want Israel to stop and think very seriously before it takes any further action.
The US Senate has passed a $95 billion aid package for Ukraine, Israel and Taiwan after months of wrangling, but it faces opposition from the House of Representatives. The foreign aid bill passed by 70 to 29. While Democrats were in favor of passing the bill, Republicans were divided and previously voted it down. The package includes $60 billion for Kyiv, $14 billion for Israel's war against Hamas, and $10 billion for humanitarian aid in conflict zones, including in Gaza. Ukraine's president said he was grateful to senators for passing it. The majority leader of the Senate described it as one of the most historic bills ever to pass.
It's certainly been years, perhaps decades, since the Senate passed a bill that so greatly impacts not just our national security, not just the security of our allies, but the security of Western democracy.
The ex-US President Donald Trump has asked the Supreme Court to suspend a lower court ruling that he does not have presidential immunity from prosecution. He had claimed in his election interference case he could not be tried for acts carried out as president. 3 lower court judges disagreed, ruling that he can be prosecuted like any other citizen, but Mr. Trump's lawyers said he should not be tried during an election campaign. Police in northern India have fired tear gas to prevent thousands of protesting farmers demanding minimum crop prices from marching on Delhi. The capital is ringed by razor wire, cement blocks and fencing on 3 sides to keep protests at bay. The government fears a repeat of 2020, where dozens died in a year-long protest that ended only after ministers agreed to repeal controversial agricultural laws. But just over 2 years later, farmers say other demands have not been met. India's farmers form an influential voting bloc, and analysts say the government of Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be keen not to alienate them. His BJP is seeking a 3rd consecutive term in power in general elections this year. Footage shows a huge fire engulfing a newly built water park in Gothenburg in Sweden. 12 people were sent to hospital for minor injuries, and police say 1 person is missing. Officers evacuated a hotel and nearby offices, warning residents to stay inside because of the smoke. The cause is still unknown. The water park, which was due to open later this year, was part of an expansion of Leisburg Amusement Park. Senegalese lobby groups have called for peaceful protests across the country against the postponement of this month's presidential election. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has ordered the deployment of 2,900 soldiers to aid in the fight against armed rebel groups in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The troops will be posted as part of the Southern African Mission in Democratic Republic of Congo, which was approved by the regional bloc in May last year. Malawi and Tanzania will also contribute troops to the mission. And thousands of drivers for ride-sharing platforms Uber, Lyft and food delivery drivers are expected to go on strike across the United States and the UK on Valentine's Day for fair pay.
Delivering with Uber lets you make money on your own schedule.
The drivers, considered independent contractors, have accused the platforms of taking disproportionately high amounts as commissions. In 2023, Uber drivers' monthly average gross earnings fell 17.1%. In the UK, Deliveroo said its riders always earn at least the national living wage. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Many thanks indeed, Simon. In the world of sports, players of the Super Eagles of Nigeria have condemned cyber attacks on teammate and midfielder Alex Iwobi, insisting that the virulent attacks on the player were totally uncalled for. Now, some of the players who spoke with newsmen at the end of the presidential reception in honor of the team said Iwobi didn't deserve the attacks, having shown dedication to duty and a remarkable attitude in all international duties. In the meantime, the federal government is pledging her continued support for the Super Eagles of Nigeria following the narrow loss of the trophy to the Elephants of Cote d'Ivoire. Minister of Sports Development, Senator John Owaneno, on arrival at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja, told journalists that the government is satisfied with the performance of the Super Eagles of Nigeria and will do everything possible to sustain the growth of the team. The government stance is also echoed by MTN Nigeria.
Nigerian teams in competitions like the just concluded AFCON enjoy support from corporate Nigeria. And one of those spearheading this is telecommunications giant MTN, consistently engaging in campaigns to garner support. True to their commitment, MTN sponsored a troupe that is trailing spectators eagerly awaiting the arrival of the Super Eagles at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja. After several hours of waiting, players and officials of the team arrive Abuja. With a strong belief in the team, some players share their experiences.
We have tried our best, but I think the best team win. So inshallah, next time we're going to do all our best to get that winning.
I would have loved to come here carrying the trophy with the rest of the team. But yeah, I'm very proud of everything we did. We gave it everything we had. And I'm sure we're going to be better in the future.
To be honest, it's a very tough one for us. To be serious, it's a very tough one for us because as you can see, these guys were not happy after playing unbeaten and lose the last game. It's better we lose the group stage game and win the finals game.
Coach Pesero and the president of the Nigeria Football Federation believe in the team and want Nigerians to do the same.
Our team did a fantastic job. They did a fantastic performance. On the last match, you could not do better than the opponent.
By the rest of God, we are going to try as much as possible to build from here. The next step is for qualification to the World Cup.
Ahead of the World Cup qualifiers, the Minister of Sports Development promises a better deal for Nigerians.
The greatest challenge for us as a country and as a people, as a sport, is how to sustain what we've reached.
Over the years, MTN has demonstrated her support for Nigerian sports, both in athletics and football, and has backed words with action at all levels.
And better luck next time to the Super Eagles of Nigeria. That's Sports News Tonight. I'm Kelly. It's back to Anne.
Thank you, Kelly. And the main news again. Former Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, today testified in the trial of former CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele and said that the signature in the letter for the payment of $6.2 million to foreign election observers was fake. And Access Holdings PLC has announced the appointment of Ms. Bolaji Agbede as the acting Group Chief Executive Officer. This follows the death of its former Group Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Herbert Igwe, in a helicopter crash alongside his wife, son, and a former chairman of the Nigeria Exchange Group, Abimbola Ogunbanjo, on Friday in California, United States. Ms. Agbede was head of HR Access Bank from 2010 and climbed to the role of Access Holdings PLC Founding Executive Director, Business Support. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Mwawadu. Good night.